just to give us some sort of background to this whole panel. So few highlights from the reports are like biases in recruitment reduce the chance of women qualifying the interview process almost by half. In 2020, women make only $0.81 for every dollar a man makes. Women in the controlled gender pay gap, which controls for job title, years of experience, industry, location, and other compensable factors, make $0.98 for every $1 a man makes. Harvard's global online research study showed that 76% of people, men and women, are gender biased and tend to think of men as better suited for careers and women as better suited as homemakers. In 2018, an ILO report found that 606 million women of working age all over the world declared themselves to be unavailable for employment due to unpaid care work, while only 41 million men were inactive for the same reason. That's a big gap there. And mothers of children below the age of 5 have the lowest employment rate compared with fathers and women who had no children.
I think even issues of safety of women, for instance, we never talked about these issues. It's very surprising. I mean, when I look back, issues of harassment at workplace or, feeling unsafe, it never even crossed our minds. But now, in 2020, with so many of these kind of issues that have come up in the last few years, we have policies that protect women. There is POSH. There's a lot more conversation around, nurturing women in organization systems. Feminism also has kind of evolved over the last 30 years, the way feminists were looked at when we started. Many people would not even want to call themselves feminists. So acceptance of feminist leadership, feminist perspectives. So all those things have changed over the last 30 years, I would say.
So the point of departure, and I think this is something that we need to recognize, is that when we talk about women and work and building inclusive organizations, we're talking about a very small segment of women who are in the formal labor force. And we need to recognize that women have always worked and are always working. They have just been statistically invisibilized. And it has a lot to do with the roles that women occupy in the workforce. So even when you're looking at something like agriculture, women do a lion's share of seeding and sowing work, but it's the men who take produce to market, right? So it's the proximity to market that enables you to be statistically counted as being part of the labor force. So I think this is, the baseline is that we're talking about a very small segment of women here.
One of the principles of feminist principles is personal is political. Now, what does that mean? That whatever you are preaching outside is also what you practice at home. And the ability to ask that question, reflect on that all the time in your personal space as well as in your professional space, I think it's a very, very important part of a feminist leadership model.
The development sector per se, it's a very complex one. We're trying to solve problems that the mainstream have not solved. The work is even more difficult and challenging than, other problems that would have been mainstream. Because if the government could have solved some of the things we looked at, they would have solved it. If the markets could have solved the interface problems that we have dealing with things. So we deal in spaces where nobody come together. And I think the feminist leadership approach provides an excellent opportunity to actually find solutions.
Two major components of what constitutes feminist leadership is a deep analysis of power. Where is power held? And there's this concept of power with and power over, right? So power over is having power over the people that you manage, and power with is holding collective power. So that is one aspect of it. I think the other aspect of it is to be deeply involved with the project of systemic change, right? Everyone in this sector is in this sector because there's something that we want to change. And similarly, within our organizations, as senior members of our organizations, we need to be deeply involved in and invested in changing the status quo so that we're moving from this model of power over to a model of power with. If we are striving towards increasing gender justice in the work that we do, then we have to walk the walk. It's as simple as that. So there's no point in talking about social norms change if organizations are following the long established rules of the road.
An organization needs to look into very seriously is to address the life cycle needs of women. Typically, women who join the organization early in the career, you will find that after 3-4 years, they do get married, and then there is, of course, they will decide to have a family, and they may not be able to do what they joined the organization for in the initial. It may involve more field work, and then you may need something which is less of field work and more desk work. So organizations also need to be creative, and that's where retention happens.
This was my learning in India, where, and believe me, I did every blooper possible. There's a series of unspoken rules here. They're not written anywhere, and someone's supposed to guess them. I don't know, because I do something and then I get these unspoken rules. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. Like, who created those? Where is that book of rules? It seems to be like embedded in people's minds. So you almost have to, and you cannot over challenge it, because then the people, because that's how they live, they abide by these rules. That is their truth, no? So this understanding of unspoken rules, this attitude has to sort of like help the attitude shift. And it's not only the person that abides by them, it's the person that perpetrates them as well.
I began this conversation speaking about how I am anchored by the respect of the work that has been done by women who have come before me. And this is where this whole intergenerational angle comes in. That, I am here today because of the women and the women's movement. I am here today because of a lot of the community workers that have advanced the project of women in leadership positions, and in terms of women who are more senior to me within my own organization. So I think a very strong way forward is, regardless of where you are in the hierarchy, is to pay it forward within our own organizations.
So investing in the male colleagues is also equally important in an organization to be effective. It is not about men versus women. It is together creating an organization which is committed to feminist principles, which is actually ready to dismantle this structure of patriarchy, which actually is harmful for both men and women.